Hi, my dear students. I'm Dr. Jeetu. Today, I'll be dealing with gingival enlargement. Multiple questions have been asked from this chapter as MCQs. My reference is Karansa's 13th edition. I hope you have the soft copy with you, so please do refer. There are a lot of figures also. So, along with the theory part, be thorough with the figures also. Let's go into the presentation. So, how gingival enlargement is classified? This is according to the 1999 classification. The first is inflammatory enlargement. Any enlargement due to inflammation, it can be chronic or it can be acute. The second group is drug-induced enlargement. Third is enlargement associated with systemic diseases or conditions, which is again subdivided into conditioned enlargements and systemic diseases causing gingival enlargement. Conditioned enlargement means it is primarily due to plaque, but it is modified by the following conditions, and these conditions can be pregnancy, puberty, vitamin C deficiency, plasma cell gingivitis, and non-specific conditioned enlargement like granuloma pyogenicum or pyogenic granuloma. The second class is systemic disease causing enlargement, that is, it is due to systemic disease alone, it is independent of plaque. The conditions coming under this group are leukemia and granulomatous diseases like Wegener's granulomatosis and sarcoidosis. The fourth group is gingival enlargement, which can be due to benign tumors or malignant tumors due to neoplastic enlargement. Fifth group is false enlargement. It is not due to a true enlargement of the gingiva, but is due to the enlargement of the underlying bony structure or something, and it presents as a gingival enlargement. So let us see the details of each type of gingival enlargement. The first is chronic inflammatory enlargement. This is very common. So look at the figure also. It originates as a slight ballooning of the interdental papilla. So each enlargement has a specific term describing that enlargement, or it has a peculiar feature. So you have to be thorough with those terms. So for chronic inflammatory enlargement, you should remember ballooning of the interdental papilla. That is how it appears. You can see from the figure. And it can involve the marginal gingiva also. It produces a life preserver shaped bulge or life jacket type of bulge it is producing around the involved teeth. It is due to prolonged exposure to dental plaque, primarily due to plaque it is, and the factors that favor plaque accumulation and retention are poor oral hygiene, any irritation due to abnormal anatomy of the tooth, or due to improper restorative and orthodontic appliances. So all these will produce chronic inflammatory enlargement in a patient. Now, gingival changes associated with mouth breathing is also considered as a chronic inflammatory enlargement. Chronic means it is extending for a period of time and it is inflammatory enlargement. The maxillary anterior region is the most commonly involved area, and the harmful effect is due to irritation from the surface dehydration. When there is mouth breathing, there is dehydration from the surface of the gingiva, and this is causing this chronic inflammatory enlargement. The next is acute inflammatory enlargement. What is the example? It is gingival abscess. So it is due to impingement of any toothbrush bristles or any fish bone or anything which presents as a abscess of the gingiva. This is acute, meaning to say the time duration of formation of this is less. Now, periodontal abscess or lateral abscess also produces enlargement of the gingiva. How to differentiate? Periodontal abscess involves the supporting periodontal tissue also, or the periodontium also. So that was the first class, inflammatory enlargement. The second class is drug-induced gingival overgrowth or DIGO. Now, drug-induced gingival overgrowth can be produced primarily by three classes of drugs: anticonvulsants, immunosuppressants, and calcium channel blockers. About drug-induced gingival overgrowth, males are 3 times more likely to develop this type of overgrowth. So there is a male predominance. Another genetic predisposition is HLA-B37 positive individuals are more likely to get this type of enlargement. So HLA-B37 individuals are more likely to get DIGO. Similarly, HLA-DR1 positive individuals are less likely to get DIGO. So HLA-B37 positive means more likely, HLA-DR1 positive means less likely to get enlargement. After we take this drug or after we start this drug therapy, the enlargement appears within 1 to 3 months of starting of the treatment. How is the presentation? Just revising the chronic inflammatory enlargement, it was like a life preserver shaped bulge. About DIGO, it is a painless bead-like enlargement of the interdental papilla. So this is the key term that you should remember, bead-like enlargement of the interdental papilla. See the figure also. When uncomplicated by inflammation, the lesion will be mulberry shaped. Okay, there will be small lobulations. It will be mulberry shaped. It is firm, pale pink and resilient, and as we already said, it is minutely lobulated surface. There is no tendency to bleed because it is very fibrous. It is having no tendency to bleed. The enlargement appears to project from beneath the gingival margin. Please note that term, it appears to project from beneath the gingival margin. It actually involves the marginal gingiva and the interdental papilla, but it appears as if, because the enlargement is very big, it appears as if it is from beneath the gingival margin, or it looks as if it involves the attached gingiva also. Now it is more severe in the maxillary and mandibular anterior regions. Note that point, DIGO most commonly involves the anterior region. If there is any secondary inflammatory change, the enlargement becomes even more bulky and there is a red or bluish red discoloration. When it is not complicated by inflammation, it was pale pink. Now it is red or bluish red. Also, it obliterates the lobulated surface demarcations. When it was mulberry shaped, there were small lobulations. When it is inflamed, it obliterates all these lobulations and there is also an increased tendency towards bleeding. When we see the histopathology, there is a peculiar term, test tube shaped retapex are there. In histopathology, we can see very elongated or test tube shaped retapex, and it is most commonly seen with phenytoin induced gingival enlargement. So the first group of drug is phenytoin or dilantin. It is hydantoin. It is introduced by Merritt and Putnam in 1938. Okay, so the drug was introduced in 1938. Now this phenytoin-induced enlargement was prescribed by Kimball in the next year, 1939. So how is the enlargement happening? It is because of increase in the collagen, increase in the fibroblast, increase in blood vessels, increase in ground substance. So all the underlying structures are getting increased. Now the term enlargement is largely being replaced by the term overgrowth. Why? Because it is not a mere enlargement of the gingiva, it is considered as an overly produced natural growth of the tissue. See, as we already said, the fibroblasts are increasing, the fibroblasts are producing more of collagen, the blood vessels are increasing, the ground substance are increasing. So, the whatever structures are normally increasing in a normal growth, all these structures are increasing. So, the natural growth is overly happening. So, it is called the overgrowth. Now, other than phenytoin, other anti-epileptics like valproic acid, carbamazepine, ethosuximide can also cause enlargement. So, we have some substitute drugs which are, if phenytoin is causing an enlargement, you can try by substituting valproic acid because it is causing less amount of gingival enlargement. But in the long run, they will also cause enlargement. So, the newer agents like phenobarbital or vigabatrin can be considered. Again, they can also cause gingival enlargement when used on long term. Next is cyclosporin-induced gingival hyperplasia. Cyclosporin is an immunosuppressant, and gingival hyperplasia due to this was first described by Ratishak in 1983. So many years after phenytoin-induced gingival enlargement, that was in 1939. Here, as we all know, immunosuppressants are mostly taken by patients who undergo renal transplant. The funny thing is, the patients will be taking cyclosporin, and cyclosporin's major side effect is again renal toxicity. It may occur in as many as 75% of the patients. There is a difference between cyclosporin-induced enlargement when compared to phenytoin-induced. It is very vascular. The cyclosporin-induced enlargement is vascular. Another difference is there is increased proportion of the myofibroblast. Okay, and one more is plasma cells presence and also amorphous extracellular substances present in abundance. Next, coming to the substitute drug for cyclosporin-induced gingival hyperplasia. You can't stop a immunosuppressant drug which a patient is taking, but you can substitute with a drug causing less amount of gingival hyperplasia, and the substitute drug is tacrolimus. This question has been asked. Substitute for cyclosporin-induced enlargement is tacrolimus. Next is calcium channel blockers. Gingival overgrowth due to nifedipine, which is a calcium channel blocker, was first reported by Raman et al. In 1984. The next year after, cyclosporin-induced enlargement was reported. Here, a speciality is the enlargement affects the attached gingiva. The first two, there was involvement of only interdental papilla and marginal gingiva. Another difference in calcium channel blocker induced enlargement is leathery consistency of the enlargement. Also, there is minutely pebbly surface you can see. In phenytoin, we were telling it as mulberry shaped. Here it is described as pebbled surface. It is relatively avascular, similar to phenytoin-induced enlargement. It consists of dense collagen bundles and numerous fibroblasts. Another important question is substitute drug to replace nifedipine when the patient has enlargement. It is isradipine. Isradipine is a substitute drug to be used in case of calcium channel blocker induced enlargement. Other than the three major groups, that is antiepileptics, immunosuppressants, and calcium channel blockers, many other drugs also cause enlargement, and these drug groups are amphetamines. Then we have erythromycin, which is a substitute for amoxicillin allergy or penicillin allergy. Then we have cannabis and sertraline. All these drugs causes enlargement. Next peculiar gingival enlargement is hereditary gingival fibromatosis. It has many synonyms: gingivomatosis, elephantiasis because of the elephant-like big swelling, idiopathic fibromatosis because etiology is unknown, hereditary gingival hyperplasia because it is hereditary, and congenital familial fibromatosis because it may be present by birth or congenital. Okay, so look at the figure also. Normally, the gingiva is having normal color and firm consistency. It doesn't bleed, it is non-hemorrhagic, and it is asymptomatic. Other than that, it is enlarged, it is not showing any of much symptoms. Okay, no predilection. Males and females are equally at risk. Drug-induced enlargement was having male predilection, about 3 times more likely they were. Here it is, male and female having an equal chance. It is an autosomal dominant condition, usually begins at the time of eruption of the permanent adhesion. That is when people notice this. It can disappear or recede with the loss of teeth. Very important. Once the teeth is lost, this enlargement disappears. And this feature is also seen with drug-induced gingival overgrowth. Some studies have shown that after the patient becomes edentulous, the drug-induced gingival overgrowth also resolves. Another important question is, there is an association between this gingival fibromatosis, corneal opacities, and retarded tooth eruption. The gingival fibromatosis is there. Because of this, there is retarded tooth eruption. Also, the patient shows corneal opacity. What is this condition? It is called Rutherford syndrome. So, Rutherford syndrome is gingival fibromatosis plus retarded tooth eruption plus corneal opacity. Important question. Coming to the third class, conditioned enlargement. Here, magnification of the existing inflammation which was initiated by dental plaque is happening. The culprit is dental plaque itself, but the following conditions can modify or magnify the enlargement. The first one is hormonal conditions like pregnancy or puberty. Second one is nutritional conditions like vitamin C deficiency. Third one is allergy, and fourth one is non-specific conditioned enlargement. Then also we have systemic diseases causing gingival enlargement, which is independent of the plaque or inflammatory status of the gingiva. About pregnancy, the progesterone and estrogen levels reach 10 and 30 times during the menstrual cycle level respectively. That is, progesterone reaches 10 times more the level and estrogen reaches 30 times more the levels. These hormonal changes can induce changes in the vascular permeability, and this is causing the gingival edema, increased inflammation, and the enlargement. Also, there is alteration in the bacterial composition because these hormones can substitute naphthoquinone, which is a nutritional requirement of bacteria like Prevotella intermedia. So, it is like a more favorable environment for Prevotella intermedia to colonize. It can present in two types. One is marginal gingival enlargement. That means all of the marginal gingiva is enlarged. It occurs in 10 to 70% of the cases. Also, there can be tumor-like gingival enlargement. Localized tumor-like enlargements can be seen in 1.8 to 5% of the cases. This is regarding the pregnancy-related gingival enlargement. When it is tumor-like, it will be a discrete mushroom-like flattened spherical mass which projects from the gingival margin or interdental papilla, and it can be sessile or it can be pedunculated. Another important question, gingival enlargement of pregnancy, histopathologically it is termed as angiogranuloma. So what is angiogranuloma? It is pregnancy-associated gingival enlargement itself, but it is a histological term. Next one is enlargement during puberty. You can look at the figure. You can see bulbous interproximal papillae. See how many terms we learned now. For chronic inflammatory enlargement, it was known as balloon-like enlargement. For drug-induced, it was bead-like enlargement of the interdental papilla. Now, for pubertal enlargement, it is called bulbous interproximal papillae. Here, the gingival bacterial flora is altered, Capnocytophaga species increases. This is initiating the pubertal gingivitis. Prevotella intermedia was the species which was increased in pregnancy. In puberty, it is Capnocytophaga. So, I know this is silly, but I remember this capnocytophaga increasing in pubertal gingivitis with using this image. Young girl or a child at pubertal age wearing a cap. So capnocytophaga is a species increasing in pubertal gingivitis. Pubertala intermedia mostly in pregnancy. But pubertala intermedia and pubertala nigrescens also increases in pubertal gingivitis because of the presence of the hormones. Next conditioned enlargement is due to vitamin C deficiency or scurvy. Here there is defective formation and maintenance of collagen. And as we know, the major composition of bone is also collagen. So there is retardation or cessation of osteoid formation and impairment of osteoblastic function also. In gingiva, what we can see, bleeding, swelling of gingiva and loosened teeth are the common features. Gingival enlargement is marginal and the key features are bluish red, soft and friable gingiva. There is friability of the gingiva. That you should note. Then there is smooth shiny surface with another important feature is surface necrosis with pseudomembrane formation. This is very peculiar. It is not seen in any other gingival enlargements. Pseudomembrane formation is seen in scurvy induced gingival enlargement. There is a scarcity of collagen fibrils or fibroblast, which is also a striking feature because most of the other enlargements were due to increase in the collagen or fibroblast. Here there is scarcity. Next is due to an allergic cause. It is plasma cell gingivitis, atypical gingivitis or plasma cell gingivostomatitis. You can see the figure. It is a mild marginal gingival enlargement that may also extend to attached gingiva. When this lesion is localized, it is called plasma cell granuloma. But when it is generalized, we call it plasma cell gingivitis. It is commonly related to components of chewing gum or toothpaste or some diet components. Common agent is cinnamon. This is also a repeatedly asked question. Which ingredient causes plasma cell gingivitis or allergic gingivitis? It is cinnamon. The last conditioned enlargement is non-specific conditioned enlargement or pyogenic granuloma. Here, this is a tumor-like gingival enlargement that is considered as an exaggerated response to minor trauma. Any minor trauma showing an exaggerated response and a tumor-like enlargement is called a granuloma. Coming to systemic diseases causing enlargement, the first one being leukemia. What is leukemia? It is the malignant neoplasia of the white blood cell precursors or WBC precursors. There are three important characteristics. There is diffuse replacement of the bone marrow with this proliferating leukemic cells. Leukemic cells are immature WBCs. So, whole of the bone marrow get replaced with this immature WBCs. The second one is abnormal number and forms of this immature WBC in the circulating blood. So, immature WBCs are fully infiltrating the bone marrow. It is seen in the blood. And the third one is it also infiltrates organs like liver, spleen, lymph nodes and other sites throughout the body. This is how the enlargement looks like. It is a diffuse enlargement. Diffuse means it involves all the three parts of gingiva, the marginal gingiva, interdental papilla and the attached gingiva. Leukemia can be lymphocytic or myelocytic depending upon the lineage. It can also be acute, subacute or chronic. So whatever it be, leukemic cells infiltrate all of the gingiva and hence the enlargement happens. And since there is overproduction of the immature WBCs, there is reduced production of the normal RBC, WBC and platelet. And because of the lack of production of RBCs, the patient becomes anemic. Lack of production of WBC, the patient becomes susceptible to infections. And because of deficiency of platelets, the patient presents with bleeding disorders. Some patients have normal blood counts while leukemic cells are present in bone marrow. This condition is called aleukemic leukemia. Usually, the leukemic cells infiltrate the bone marrow, the blood and the other organs so that there is no normal blood counts. In some situations, the patient shows normal blood counts and this is called aleukemic leukemia. Usually, true leukemic enlargement occurs only in acute leukemia. Acute leukemia is the rapidly fatal condition and true enlargement occurs in acute leukemia. Also may be seen in subacute leukemia but not in chronic leukemia. So, as we already mentioned, vitamin C was the only condition which we learned till now showing a pseudomembranous network. Leukemic enlargement also shows acute necrotizing inflammation with a pseudomembrane formation. Next is Wegener's granulomatosis. It is acute granulomatous necrotizing lesions of the nasal tract. That means it involves the nasal cavity as well as the oral cavity. So, it involves our gingiva also. The initial manifestations may be oral mucosal ulceration, there is gingival enlargement, abnormal tooth mobility, exfoliation of the teeth and delayed healing response. The appearance of gingiva is a papillary enlargement which is reddish purple and bleeds easily on stimulation. Look at the figure. It is typically known as the strawberry type of gingival enlargement. It is resembling a strawberry, right? You can also see giant cells and focus of acute inflammation and micro abscesses. Next is sarcoidosis. It is a red, smooth, painless enlargement. A peculiar feature is common in blacks. Okay, it is a granulomatous lesion. So you can see non-caseating walls of epithelioid cells. That is usually granuloma is a collection of epithelioid cells and giant cells. Here it is non-caseating walls of epithelioid cells and multinucleated foreign body type of giant cells. The enlargement is red, smooth and painless enlargement. The fourth class was neoplastic enlargement. About neoplastic enlargement, the two most common ones are fibroma and papilloma. Fibroma is a slow-growing spherical tumor that is firm and nodular. Look at the figure, a firm and nodular swelling, and it is composed of collagen fibers. What is important about this is fibroma is of connective tissue origin, so it is due to collagen fibers. Papilloma is of epithelial origin. It is a benign proliferation of the surface epithelium and it is mostly associated with human papilloma virus. The HPV virus subtypes 6 and 11 are the major causative organisms. Note that it has been asked, HPV 6 and 11 are commonly involved in producing papillomas of gingiva. Here you can see the figure. It is a finger-like projection of the stratified squamous epithelium and it is usually hyperkeratotic. That is why you can see that whitish discoloration. Finally, I will tell you about one more swelling of the gingiva, that is gingival cyst. It appears as a localized enlargement. It involves the marginal and attached gingiva. Mostly occurs in the mandibular, canine and premolar areas, often on the lingual surface. So, it is very clear from the picture, mandibular, canine and premolar areas and on the lingual surface. The cyst is a painless enlargement, but there is expansion and erosion of the alveolar bone. So, it falls under the false gingival enlargement. That is the final class of gingival enlargement. So that is all. You have to be thorough with the key terms associated with each type of enlargement and also see the figures repeatedly. So seeing the figures repeatedly can help you memorize the features also easily. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. Thank you.